do engage in unionization activities, and the responsibility of government to do something about that?
Look, workers have an absolute right to join a union if they want to. They also have a right not to join a union. If intimidation is a problem, why would we get rid of secret ballot elections? It's the secret ballot that protects workers from intimidation. Now, with regard to the numbers he put out, they're simply not true. That 31,000 figure is the National Labor Relations Board tracks the number of workers who get back pay each year. Back pay is typically awarded when an employer makes a change to your working environment. Say he cuts your hours. But he has to negotiate first. So the board comes in and says, no, you can't change the working environment before the workers have been, before you've negotiated with it. Pay them what they would have got otherwise. The figure has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with workers being fired each year. American Rights at Work, the pro-union organization that's lobbying for this bill, put out a report. And if you actually read the numbers in their report, they find that there's any employer misconduct in only 7% of elections. 93% of elections, there's no meritorious charges of employer misconduct. But again, if intimidation's a problem, it's the secret ballot that ensures that a worker can say, oh, yes, boss, yes, I'm absolutely going to vote against the union, and then in the privacy of the voting booth, vote the other way. Or when the union officials are at their home late at night can say, oh, yeah, of course I want the Teamsters representing me. I'm going to vote for the union. And then in the privacy of the voting booth, vote the other way. Workers should have the right to make their choice in privacy. And the problem with this law, read the law. Read if there's anything in the law that talks about workers having a choice. The law simply says the National Labor Relations Board shall not direct an election once the union organizers have collected cards from 50% of employees. Workers would have no choice. And then with the government stepping in, no government bureaucrat is in a position to run your company, to run your job, to tell you what your wages should be, what your benefits should be, what your work assignments should be, what promotion opportunities you should have, what equipment your company should use to do the job. They're unaccountable. They don't know. They're just being parachuted in there. Government planning is not a recipe for economic health. Workers have leverage in the current system. They can do work slowdowns. They can go on strike. If the employer is refusing to enter into a contract, the system gives workers pretty significant leverage they can use to force them to the bargaining table. Companies don't sign these contracts out of the goodness of their heart.
This kind of deregulatory nonsense has led, this kind of deregulatory nonsense and falsehoods has led to 30 years of flat and declining wages, 47 million of us in America without health care, 20% more people in poverty today than when George Bush took office, and CEO pay that in 1980 was 40 times as much as the average worker, today is 400 times as much as the average worker, more inequality in the U.S. than we've had since the 1920s, the greatest inequality in the world. This is all deregulatory nonsense. We need to protect workers who try to form a union so they can get health care for their kids, or so they can get a pension, or so they can get dignity and respect on the job. And James is just not being truthful. The Center for Economic Policy and Research came out with a study last week that says in 26% of all organizing campaigns, worker union leaders are fired. In study after study, we find 90% of the time employers hire anti-union consultants and attorneys. That's now a $4 billion a year industry to frustrate the will of the workers. 75% of the time, they put workers through one-on-one supervisory sweat sessions. 50% of the time, they threaten to close the workplace. And now 26% of the time, they fire worker union leaders. 1/3 of all the workers who form a union never get a first contract. The system is broken. It's geared for the employer. There is an imbalance of power, an inherent imbalance of power in the workplace. And if we're going to lift this economy out of this crisis caused by the same kind of deregulatory nonsense that James is saying this morning, we need to lift it from the bottom by putting more money into the pockets and hands of workers to spend in this economy, and that is by allowing them to bargain collectively with their employer.
Stewart Acuff,
how does getting rid of secret ballots do that? Getting rid of secret ballots doesn't do that.
It is no accident that the middle class in this country, the broad, deep, strong middle class in this country that has been the strength of this economy, was created when workers got the freedom to form unions. by either signing cards or going to an election between 1935 and 1955, when 12 million workers formed unions and we created the modern American middle class and the American dream.
Stewart
Acuff, the middle class.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second here.
Sure.
Because I'd like to get to the practicalities of how this fight is going to go on in Congress. One of the things that I've heard, because you've got three main parts of this bill, which is the card check, the higher fines for retaliation against workers, and also the 120-day arbitration period. I've been told that some union leaders would be willing to compromise on the 120-day for a new contract in order to get the rest of the bill through. Is that a debate going on within the labor movement right now?
No, that's not an open debate, Juan. I can't say that nobody has said that. We expect to pass this bill as it is written. We have the votes to do so. We have the House leadership with us, the Senate leadership with us, and the White House strongly with us. So we expect it to pass it as it is written.
Stewart Acuff, I also want to ask how this will affect Walmart. The CEO of Walmart, Lee Scott, talked about this at a meeting. He said, we like driving the car. We're not going to give the steering wheel to anybody but us. They're one of the few companies in this time of dire economic stress that is reporting profits.
Well, it will give Walmart workers an opportunity to bargain for higher wages, to bargain for health care, and to bargain for a better way of life. Let me tell you, it's no accident that the biggest chunk of users of Medicaid in America are Walmart employees. So Walmart has made a lot of money by cheating their workers, forcing people to work off the clock, stopping unions, by lowballing their suppliers, and by cheating taxpayers, by forcing the rest of us to pay for their medical care for their workers. So Walmart will,
Let me give James Sherk here the last word. Your response.
It's not going to help any business to have the government come in, to have a bureaucrat parachuted in and simply impose a business plan on the company.
It'll help workers, though, James.
It wouldn't help workers if you've got the government driving your company into bankruptcy. If you don't have a job because a bureaucrat imposed a contract, the company couldn't change for 2 years, and the company goes out of business. Government planning, the idea of government planning, it went down with the Berlin Wall.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there.
Work.
James Sherk with the Heritage Foundation, Stewart Acuff with the AFL-CIO.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you. Transcript and the video and audio podcast. That does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Sharufo Dokadus, Aaron Mate. Happy birthday, Aaron. Anjali Kamat, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Ravi Karen, Mike DeVolivo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curry, our engineers. Special thanks also to Elizabeth Press, Nick Gilla. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now!